I was supposed to sign my divorce papers at 2 p.m. By 1:45, I pulled up in a white limousine, and watched the mistress try to kiss him goodbye. If you want to see what happens when a woman takes back everything she lost, hit subscribe, and stay tuned for the full story. And don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments, we want to hear from you. What would you do, if everyone thought you were already beaten? My name is Emily Carter. 37 years old. Professor of American Literature at Midtown University. 2 kids, 2 cats, 1 ex-life that looked perfect on paper. I taught my students about betrayal, how it hides behind soft smiles and late-night texts. How it builds slowly, like fog. And how, when the sun finally rises, you see everything for what it really is. Jonathan and I had been married for 12 years when I found the first text. Just a good morning from someone named Layla. Cute, right? Except Layla wasn't some coworker. She was a student in my own department. 29. Curly hair. Big eyes. Smiled like she knew secrets. For months, I played the part. The loving wife. The distracted mother. The woman too busy grading papers to notice her husband slipping away. Everyone thought I didn't see it coming. My friends. His parents. Even the lawyer he hired to draw up those divorce papers. They said I'd lose everything. The house. The kids. My dignity. They said I should just sign and walk away quietly. But here's the thing about quiet people, we hear more than you think. We watch longer. We plan better. It was a Thursday afternoon. 2 o'clock. The divorce meeting was set in room 3B at the law firm downtown. Jonathan had no idea I even knew about it. He thought I was picking up the kids early from soccer practice. He thought I wouldn't show up. But by 1:45 p.m., I was already there. Not inside the building. Outside. Sitting in a white stretch limo, tinted windows, engine off. Because I wanted to see her. I wanted to see them. And sure enough, right on time, there they were. Walking out of the building hand in hand. Laughing. Carefree. She stood on tiptoe and leaned in like she was going to kiss him goodbye. That's when I stepped out of the car. He froze. She blinked like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I smiled. Because the papers were ready. And so was I. Equals 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 6 months before that Thursday afternoon in front of the law firm. I still believed in happy endings. I found the first real proof of Jonathan's betrayal on a rainy Tuesday night. He was supposed to be at a conference in Chicago. But when I logged into our shared iCloud account to back up the kids' photos, there she was. Layla Morgan. My student. Our family's babysitter for 2 summers in a row. There were pictures. Messages. Hotel bookings. All under an alias, Mr. and Mrs. J. Moore. Like it was some kind of joke. Like I wasn't even real anymore. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He said it just happened. Said I had become predictable. Said he needed someone who understood him. He said those things while sitting at the dinner table. While my daughter asked if we were going to Disney World like we'd promised. 2 weeks later, he filed for divorce. His lawyer handed me a stack of papers thicker than a college textbook. The house? Gone. Joint accounts? Frozen. Custody? Shared, but tilted heavily in his favor. I would get the guest bedroom on weekends if I was lucky. Everyone turned away. Friends stopped returning my calls. Colleagues whispered in the hallway. Even my own department chair suggested I take a leave of absence, for my mental health, he said. So I did. I walked out of Midtown University one spring morning and never went back. My savings dried up fast. I couldn't afford the house alone. I moved into a small apartment above a laundromat in the city. Noisy. Smelled like soap and wet towels. But it was all I could afford after paying legal fees I didn't want but had no choice but to fight. And then came the worst part. Layla didn't just sleep with my husband. She erased me completely. Changed her phone number. Blocked me online. Even wrote a letter to the university saying I was unstable and tried to sabotage her grades years ago, a lie so bold, it made headlines in the faculty newsletter. I remember standing in the grocery store once, holding a frozen pizza, trying to decide if I should eat or pay the electric bill. And I just broke. Right there in aisle 3. Cried like I'd never cried before. Because I wasn't just losing my marriage. I was losing myself. Jonathan took the life I built. Layla stole the memories I trusted. And the world watched as I disappeared. I used to say out loud just to hear my voice. I was here. I existed. But no one answered. That's what it felt like. To lose everything. I didn't wake up one day and decide to change my life. It took something breaking for me to even notice I was still alive. It happened in late November. Cold, wet streets. I was driving back from a job interview, yes, job interview, at my age, after being a professor for over 15 years. I was tired. Hungry. Running on 3 hours of sleep and coffee from a gas station. Halfway through a yellow light, I swerved. Tires slipped on black ice. My car hit the curb. Nothing major. No one else hurt. But I was shaken. Shivering. Couldn't stop crying. They took me to St. Vincent's Hospital for observation. One look at my blood work and the doctor looked at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. High cortisol levels. Severe vitamin deficiencies. Signs of adrenal fatigue. She said the stress had basically worn my body down to almost nothing. You're not just tired, she said. You're burning out. If you don't rest, it won't be another car crash that puts you here. It'll be your own body. That's when they kept me overnight. Then 2 nights. Then 5. Room 217. Window with a view of nothing but gray sky and telephone lines. Beeps. 4 drips. And her, Marie. She was in the next bed, always reading old paperbacks or knitting scarves no one ever picked up. 76 years old. Sharp as a tack. Lost her husband 10 years earlier, then nearly lost herself trying to survive grief alone. She watched me cry into my soup the first night and didn't say anything. Just handed me a napkin and waited. By the 3rd night, we talked. She told me about how after her husband died, she gave away all his clothes the next morning. Threw out the photos. Said she buried her sadness so deep, she forgot what it felt like to feel anything at all. Until one day, she woke up and realized she'd erased herself just like everyone else did. I sat in that same hospital bed 2 years ago, she told me. And I made a promise. If I got out, I wouldn't just live again. I'd start living. She didn't preach. She didn't force advice. She just asked me questions. Did you fight back? When was the last time you stood up for yourself? What do you want now, not what they left you? Marie became my mirror. A cracked one, sure, but clear enough for me to finally see what I'd been hiding from. One afternoon, while we were both sitting by the window watching the sun break through the clouds, she turned to me and said, "You've got fire in there. You just don't know it yet. No fanfare. No music swelling in the background. Just a quiet moment between two women who had both lost too much. But something inside me shifted. Maybe it was pain. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was rage. Whatever it was the beginning of something new. I didn't start fighting to win Jonathan back. I started fighting because I had nothing left to lose. When I got out of the hospital, I didn't go back to my apartment first. I went to a law office. Monroe and Finch. Small firm, big reputation, especially for women who walked into court with broken lives and walked out with justice in their fists. That's where I met Lisa Monroe. Early 50s, no-nonsense hair, eyes that could see through lies like glass. She listened to my story without interrupting. Didn't ask me how I let it happen. Didn't tell me to be reasonable or move on. Instead, she leaned forward and said, "If he thinks you're done, let's make sure he never sees you coming." Lisa was the first person in months who treated me like I still mattered. That I still had power. And she didn't just take my case, she helped me build one. Not just for custody or alimony, but for something bigger. Jonathan had always been careful. Or so he thought. He left paper trails buried under offshore accounts, shell companies, and fake invoices. But I had time. And purpose. And something he'd never expected from me again, attention. I started digging. Deep. All-nighters with spreadsheets. Old tax returns. Credit card statements. Rental agreements. I found discrepancies everywhere. A company registered in Belize. A property in Florida he never told me about. Payments routed through third parties with no names attached. It wasn't just greed. It was fraud. And then I found the kicker, a trail of transactions that linked him to an old business partner who'd been flagged by the IRS 3 years earlier. It was there, in black and white, income manipulation, false deductions, wire transfers meant to look like consulting fees. Jonathan wasn't just hiding money. He was laundering it. So I did something he never saw coming. I called the IRS. Then the police. Then I handed them everything. Not out of revenge. Out of strategy. Because if he thought I was crawling away, licking my wounds, I was actually digging. Digging deep enough to bury him. Lisa warned me it wouldn't be easy. That people like Jonathan don't fall quietly. That if we were going to do this, we had to be smarter than scared. So we built the plan together. First, stall the divorce. Every delay gave us more time to investigate. Second, rebuild my public image. I reached out to former colleagues, students, even parents from the kids' school, not for sympathy, but for proof that I was still a good mother, a respected teacher, a woman wronged, not broken. Third, keep Layla distracted. Tip-offs to her old professors. Questions raised about her graduate thesis. Nothing illegal, just enough noise to keep her off balance. We weren't just defending myself anymore. We were dismantling his entire world. Quietly. Precisely. Completely. And all while he thought I was still crying over burnt toast. I was already rewriting the ending. Because now, it wasn't about what he took from me. It was about what I was going to take back. You think you know someone when they sit in your living room drinking tea and watching your kids play. I used to believe Layla was just young. Naive. Maybe lonely. But after everything Jonathan took from me, I went back to her, not as a friend, not even as an enemy at first, just as someone who needed to see. So I started watching her. Quietly. She didn't move into the house right away. Jonathan wasn't that stupid. But she got a new apartment downtown, fully furnished within a week. A brand new Tesla parked outside by the second week. Designer clothes. Weekly spa appointments. Weekends in Vegas. That kind of lifestyle doesn't come cheap. And Jonathan wasn't paying for all of it. I followed her enough to find out why. She had side deals going, fake online shops, stolen credit card schemes, even working with a guy named Marcus who ran a small-time gambling ring out of a backroom bar near the river. I recorded everything. Texts. Transactions. Footage from hidden cameras. Audio clips when she slipped up on social media. One night, I even bribed a bartender to let me recover a conversation she'd had with Marcus about getting more juice out of the golden goose. I didn't send it all at once. That would have been too easy. Instead, I leaked it slowly. An anonymous tip to the local news. Then another. Link sent to Jonathan's business partners. Screenshots mailed to Layla's old professors from college, reminding them of how she claimed I ruined her academic career. It didn't take long for the cracks to appear. First, Jonathan started pulling back. Canceling dinners. Not answering calls. His lawyer reached out to mine, asking if there were any unusual activities tied to Layla. He thought I was behind it. He wasn't wrong. Then Layla started panicking. Checking her phone constantly. Deleting posts. Closing accounts. Once, I saw her arguing with Marcus outside his car, loud enough for my mic to catch. "I told you he wasn't clean," she snapped. "You said he had money stacked up everywhere." Marcus spat on the ground and shot back, "You said you had access to everything. Where's the offshore account? Where's the damn trust fund?" They were both guessing. Both realizing at the same time. Jonathan wasn't the golden goose they thought he was. And somewhere in all of that mess, Layla figured something else out. That maybe she wasn't just being investigated. Maybe she was being used. One night, I caught her alone at a coffee shop, whispering into her burner phone. Her voice shaking. Angry. Desperate. "If I go down," she whispered, "I'm taking him with me." That's when I knew. The mask wasn't cracking anymore. It was coming off. That day started like any other courtroom morning in downtown Chicago, cold marble floors, echoing footsteps, lawyers with leather briefcases and unreadable faces. Except this wasn't just any day. This was my day. I arrived at 1:45 p.m. Not in my old sedan. Not in sweatpants. I stepped out of that white limousine like it was nothing, black heels clicking on the pavement, custom suit hugging every part of me that used to feel invisible. Hair done. Makeup sharp. Silence behind me as people turned to watch. Jonathan was already inside room 3B with his lawyer, thinking he'd be walking out a free man by 3 o'clock. Layla had texted him 20 minutes earlier saying she'd be there, but something changed. Maybe it was the news article that dropped an hour before court started. The one titled, "Socialite or Scammer? The Hidden Life of Layla Morgan." I didn't need to see his face to know when he read it. I could feel his panic from outside the door. When I finally walked in, silence fell. Jonathan stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped over. His lawyer looked at me like I was a ghost. And for the first time in months, I smiled, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I finally knew what power felt like. Lisa sat next to me, calm as ever. She tapped her file twice, our signal. That meant the IRS agents were already downstairs. That meant the judge had received the sealed envelope we submitted 3 days prior. That meant everything was about to collapse. The judge asked if we were ready. Lisa stood. "No," she said. "But we do have new evidence that may affect Mr. Carter's credibility." And just like that, the floor shifted. Jonathan tried to talk his way out of it. Tried to say I was desperate. That I was lying. That I was trying to ruin him. But then the clerk handed the judge another document, this one from federal investigators. It didn't take more than 5 seconds for the judge's expression to change. Before the hearing could continue, 2 men in plain clothes entered the room. One showed ID. The other simply said, "Mr. Carter, we need to talk." Jonathan turned to me. Eyes wide. Voice shaking. "What did you do?" I didn't answer. Because the truth was already speaking for itself. Layla never showed. Rumor is, she got on a bus out of town before the scandal hit full force. She left a voicemail for Jonathan that night, recorded without her knowing, thanks to a well-placed tip to a nosy neighbor. "If I go down, I'm taking him with me." She kept her promise. So did I. Later, Lisa met me outside the courthouse, snow falling softly around us. She adjusted her coat and said, almost smiling, "We had them exactly where we wanted." And she was right. Because that limousine ride wasn't a show. It wasn't revenge. It was a message. Emily Carter hadn't come back to fight. She came back to win. This part? It almost didn't make it to court. We had enough to take Jonathan down for fraud, tax evasion, maybe even conspiracy. But Lisa wanted more. I wanted everything. And deep in those spreadsheets I spent months dissecting, buried under layers of shell companies and fake invoices, was the one thing he thought we'd never find. A corporation called Morrison & Gray Holdings. Registered offshore. No employees listed. No public office. Just a name on paper, tied directly to over $4 million in unexplained transfers from real estate deals that never closed. But here's the kicker. The sole legal owner of record? A man named Daniel Holloway. Who had been dead for 6 years. Turns out, Daniel wasn't just some forgotten accountant or old business partner. He was a ghost Jonathan created. A placeholder, a name pulled from an obituary, used to build a company that existed only to funnel dirty money through clean-looking contracts. We found the link when a former associate of Jonathan's cracked under pressure. Started talking to federal agents about how Morrison & Gray was used to hide profits from questionable land flips, deals involving city officials, bribes, and falsified environmental reports. Jonathan thought no one would ever trace it back to him. He thought a dead man couldn't testify. I brought the documents into court personally. Not digital files, not screenshots, hard copies. Stamped. Certified. Unignorable. Lisa stood. Calm as always. She placed 5 folders in front of the judge. One for the prosecution. One for the court. One for Jonathan's lawyer, who stared at it like it might bite him. "This," she said, "is documentation proving Mr. Carter operated a fraudulent entity using the identity of a deceased individual, with ties to illegal financial activity." The room went cold. Jonathan tried to say something, I don't know what. His voice cracked before it even started. The judge looked at him, then at the papers, then at me. "You're saying this company doesn't exist?" "No," I said. "It exists. But it's built on a lie. And the man running it isn't the man sitting in that chair." That was the end of the hearing. Before the judge could call recess, federal agents stepped forward again. This time, not to ask questions. This time, to escort him out. They took him right there. Handcuffs. Flashbulbs from reporters outside. Cries from his mother in the back row. And me? I just sat there. Watching a man disappear the same way he made me feel for years. Later that week, full investigation launched. Assets frozen. Contracts reviewed. Property seized. Layla disappeared somewhere between Nevada and Mexico, last I heard, trying to start over somewhere nobody knew her name. As for me? Temporary custody of the kids was granted within 48 hours. I got the house back, not because I asked for it, but because the court ruled it was the most stable environment for them. And when I walked through the front door that first night, alone, barefoot, holding my daughter's backpack, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not fear. Not regret. Not even victory. Just peace. The house felt different. Not haunted. Liberated. Like it remembered who lived there first. And was finally ready to let her stay. When your world falls apart, you think you know who will stand by you. Family, at least, should be the line that doesn't break. I was wrong. It started with small things. Missing documents. Files I left in my office mysteriously moved. One morning, I came back to find my laptop open. Someone had accessed my email. I thought it was a glitch. Maybe even paranoia. But then came the messages. A private investigator hired by Jonathan's lawyer showed up at my apartment one night. Said he had proof I falsified financial records. That I'd manipulated evidence. That someone close to me had provided it. I laughed at first. Told him he was wasting his time. Until he handed me a flash drive. And until I saw the handwriting. Not typed. Not anonymous. Handwritten notes. Scans of pages ripped from my own journals. Notes I never shared with anyone, not even Lisa. Notes that detailed how I planned to take Jonathan down. That's when I knew. Someone inside my life had been feeding him everything. I didn't have to look far. Only as far as my own blood. My younger sister, Susan. 34. Lived with me for 6 months after her divorce. She said she needed time to get back on her feet. Said she wanted to help with the kids. Said she was there for me. Turns out, she was there for him. She met Jonathan twice during the case. Once at a cafe downtown. Once at his office under the pretense of helping with the kids. But those weren't casual visits. They were deals. Money changed hands. Information flowed both ways. He promised her part of what was left. A cut of the assets if they could prove I tampered with evidence or staged the investigation. He made her feel like she deserved something too, like she had been living in my shadow long enough. So she played the part perfectly. Listened when I cried. Held my hand at court hearings. Even pretended to hate Layla. All while sending screenshots to Jonathan. I confronted her 2 weeks after he was taken into custody. We were alone in the kitchen. I put the flash drive on the table between us. Her face went white before she even touched it. Why? I asked. She didn't apologize. She just said, "You always had everything, Em. The house. The job. The kids. The life. And you wanted to take it? I just wanted something of my own." That's when I realized, betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes dressed in leggings and tea mugs, pretending to care while quietly counting your losses. 2 days later, I filed a civil suit against Susan for complicity in financial fraud. She lawyered up fast. Tried to negotiate. Offered to return the money. But I wasn't interested in a settlement. I wanted justice. In every corner of this mess. Lisa called it bold. Dangerous. But necessary. What goes around, she said, should hit everyone who helped it spin. Susan gave an interview later, off the record, to a local gossip site. Said I ruined her life. That I never let her shine. She said. She was always the perfect one. I just wanted something of my own. Well, now she has it. Alone. With nothing but what she earned. By selling the only person who ever believed in her. I found the letter in a box I hadn't opened in years. It was tucked inside an old photo album my aunt sent after Mom passed. Just a simple envelope, yellowed at the edges, with my name written in her handwriting, neat, careful, like she knew one day I'd need it more than I could know then. I didn't open it right away. Life was still spinning too fast. Court dates. My kids adjusting back home. Susan gone. The dust settling, but not fully settled. But something kept pulling me back to that box. That envelope. So one night, after the kids were asleep and the house felt still enough to hear my own thoughts, I opened it. And I read every word she never got to say out loud. Dear Emily. I'm writing this because there are things I couldn't tell you when I was alive. Not because I didn't want to, but because I thought maybe, just maybe, your life would be different than mine. Your father wasn't the man you thought he was. And I wasn't the woman I pretended to be for so long. I stayed because I believed it was my duty. Because I thought walking away meant failing. And worse, I stayed because I was afraid of what he'd do if I left. You saw some of it. I know you did. But I made excuses for him. For us both. I told myself we were broken, but fixable. That love always had a price. But there is a line, Emily. A point where survival isn't weakness, it's strength. If you're reading this, it means you've crossed that line too. And I hope, with everything I have left, that you don't look back. You were always braver than I ever let myself be. Fight, baby girl. Fight hard. And when it's over, don't let your daughter ever feel the silence I left behind. Love always. Mom. When I finished reading, I just sat there. No tears. Not at first. Just wait. Heavy and real. Because all this time, I thought I was fighting Jonathan. I thought this was about betrayal. About money. Custody. Revenge. Power. But I wasn't fighting him, not really. I was fighting the pattern. The silence. The shame. The idea that women like us had to shrink, to survive. Mom never got to break free. She watched her mother suffer before her. And maybe even her grandmother before that. That letter wasn't just closure. It was a warning. And a challenge. I held it in my hands and realized. This wasn't just about me. It was about every little girl who watched her mother smile through pain. Every woman who stayed too long because she thought leaving was failure. Not anymore. That night, I made a promise. Not just to her. Not just to myself. But to my daughters. They would grow up knowing what strength looks like. Not in silence. Not in submission. But in standing up. In walking out. In rewriting the ending. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was breaking a curse. And I wasn't going to stop until they saw that freedom, lived out loud, right in front of them. This wasn't just another day in court. This was the endgame. The room was packed, not because it was dramatic, but because everyone knew what was coming. Reporters. Jonathan's old business partners. Even Layla, sitting 2 rows back, eyes darting between the judge and the FBI agents near the door. Lisa stood at the front table, her posture sharp, ready. She didn't need to raise her voice to own the room. That day, she didn't just represent me. She represented every woman who'd ever been underestimated. Written off. Buried under lies. We had everything. Every text. Every bank transfer. Every hidden account. Videos from security cameras outside Jonathan's office. Whispered conversations caught on wiretaps. A signed statement from Marcus, the same guy Layla was sneaking around with. And most importantly, Layla herself. She flipped the moment they offered her a deal. Reduced charges if she cooperated fully. She gave them everything, about the money, about the fake consulting contracts, about how Jonathan told her to delete their messages after I started digging. When she took the stand, you could hear a pin drop. Under oath, she looked straight at Jonathan and said, "He lied to me. He lied to everyone. And he used people until they were empty. He stared at her like she'd stabbed him in public. Maybe she did. Then Lisa turned to the jury. This case isn't just about divorce. It's about deception. Abuse of power. And the destruction of a family by a man who thought rules didn't apply to him. She paused. Then added. But today, those rules come back to collect. I didn't say much during the hearing. This time, the evidence spoke for itself. But when the judge asked if I had anything to add before sentencing, I stood up. Jonathan met my eyes. For once, there was no arrogance. No smirk. Just fear. And I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. I said only one sentence. I'm taking back what was mine. Not to hurt you. But to heal us. That was the last word spoken before the verdict. The jury came back fast. We find in favor of the plaintiff. Emily Pierce. The gavel hit. The room shifted. In that moment, I won more than a court case. I reclaimed my name. My home. My children. Everything Jonathan tried to erase. His assets were frozen pending further investigation. The house? Still mine. Custody? Full. Alimony? Non-existent. He tried to take everything, so the court made sure he left with nothing. As officers led him out of the courtroom in handcuffs, he turned once more. Said my name like it still meant something. I didn't respond. Because the woman he married, the one who cried over burnt toast, who disappeared into silence. She was gone. And the one standing there? She was born in fire. Forged in truth. And she was never disappearing again. The house felt different now. Not because we changed the locks. Not because Jonathan was gone. But because I had changed. 6 weeks after the verdict, I hosted something small. Not a party. Just people who mattered. Marie sat on the couch with my youngest, reading aloud from one of her old paperbacks. Lisa brought wine and said far too many smart things about justice and recovery. The kids laughed like they used to before all this mess started. And me? I stood by the kitchen window, watching the sunset hit the backyard swing set, and breathed. I didn't celebrate like they do in the movies. No champagne towers. No fireworks. Just peace. And purpose. Because winning back my home meant more than property lines or furniture. It meant taking back the space where I raised my kids. The place where I first believed in love. And later, where I learned how much it could hurt. But healing wasn't just about coming home. It was about helping others find their way back, too. So I did something I never thought I would again. I built something new. 6 months later, I opened Safe Return, a counseling center for women dealing with financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and the slow erosion of self-worth that comes with betrayal. We offered legal help, therapy, even job placement support. We weren't flashy. No big donors. No headlines. Just real women, telling real stories, in rooms where they finally felt heard. Marie helped run the mentorship program. She loved matching older survivors with younger ones, said it made her feel useful again. Lisa volunteered pro bono. Said she owed it to every woman who'd ever been told to settle. And me? I led group sessions. Shared my story. Let them see the cracks, the comebacks, the moments I almost gave up. I didn't hide the pain. I didn't sugarcoat the fight. Because they didn't need a hero. They needed proof that someone like them could make it out. One night, after a long day of meetings, I walked into my bedroom and saw a note on the mirror. My daughter wrote it. It said, "Mommy, you're brave." I stared at it for a long time. And then I whispered the truth out loud. I didn't win him back. I won myself. That courtroom wasn't where I found freedom. It was where I claimed it. I walked in as a wife who had lost everything. I walked out as a woman who had finally come home. When I first stood in that courtroom, I thought power looked like money. Or status. Or a man who once made me feel special just by walking into a room. But real power? It looks like standing up when no one believes in you. It looks like rebuilding your life with your own hands, even when they're shaking. And most of all, it looks like choosing yourself, not as an act of selfishness, but survival. This story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about transformation. Jonathan took more from me than I ever wanted to lose. But in the process, he gave me something too. He showed me how strong I could be when I had nothing left to lose. Because sometimes, it takes falling apart to find out what you're really made of. If there's one thing I hope you take from this journey, it's this. You don't need permission to rise. You don't have to wait for someone to see your worth. You already have everything inside you. To walk away from what hurts. To fight for what matters. And to come home to yourself. So if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been underestimated, or if you're still trying to find your way back, know this. You are not alone. And you are stronger than you think. Thank you for watching. And if you want to see more stories like mine, real, raw, and full of heart, hit that subscribe button, and never miss another chapter. Because the next woman who walks into a courtroom with nothing but fire in her eyes, might just be you.